All right, good evening. This is the November 17th, 2021 regular meeting of the New Canaan Police Commission. Meeting comes to order. Everybody on, Jennifer? It's open? Okay. Let's go to the minutes of the previous meeting. And I had just a minor. And two, Jennifer, on two, the department monthly reports. You talk about the animal control budget. I would just take out the word always. That's just that's a me thing. It's just healthy. And then on that last sentence, the chief noted that family disputes increased significantly with 48. I think it was just 8 calls for the month, not 48 calls for the month of September. It's like 48 for the whole time, but just 8, not 48. Right. Got it. Okay.
That was probably a yearly thing, but I'll double check.
Yeah, I think it was yearly.
Year to date.
Yeah. Okay, because either year to date or month of September, one way or the other, should be either 48 for year to date or 8 for the month of September. Right. Okay, got it. Page 2. Page 2, under B, the New Canaan Valet, about halfway down, the sentence that a brief discussion followed regarding whether or not the police commission had the authority. It just have EH. Just this is something. Okay, and that was it for me. Anything else? No. Anything else? All right. Hearing no other changes, motion to approve the minutes. So moved. Second. Aye. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, that's done. Okay, Chief, monthly reports.
Sure. First report I have is our budget. Our actual is 30.10 and it should be 33.3, so we're about 3% under budget. So that's good news. No real concerns with any of the lines yet. And we did get some rough guidance today about FY23 budget. So you'll see something on our December 15th agenda about FY23. After meeting with the first selectman, et cetera, and the subsequent meetings will be next year. So you'll see an advance of what we're looking at for FY23.
I suspect it's going to be very minimal.
Oh, there'll be
little. Well, we've got a couple of things, but yeah,
recent contract settlement. Will increase the bottom, things like that, and police accountability, et cetera.
Yeah, that costs us a couple of dollars too.
Yes, so you'll see. I'll be as
prudent
as I can be to make sure that we're able to do the great job that we do. Animal control is at 74.50, so that, is at 29, so that's under budget too. So that's good news.
Yep.
Next report I have is our staffing report. So for the month of October, we lost time was 35.44 versus 21.28, same month in 2020, and 73.16, same month in 2019. So it's somewhere in the middle in comparison to those three. We worked approximately 72% of the time with a minimum shift, and contributors are, we have our officers that are off shift in the junior high school and in high school, an officer on military leave, an officer on injury leave, and one officer is assigned to administrative duty. So those all affected our staffing levels, but we're full complement right now. So that's good news.
Yep.
Okay. Monthly statistics. Just point out some items. Burglaries 5 versus 13. So while that's lower than the same time last year, we are having a surge or trend of burglaries, specifically on Fridays, afternoon, early evening, and Darien is seeing similar burglaries. Our detectives are working on it to try to identify the suspects, but encourage everyone to see something suspicious, call us, and lock up your valuables if you can do that, so they're not easily accessible. These guys are stealing jewelry and handbags, so And they're also typically breaking through glass doors at the rear of residence. And a lot of people don't have glass alarms on those doors, so they take advantage of that and set your alarm if you have an alarm system. And take good common sense precautions. We'll catch them eventually. DUI 18 versus 17, so that's pretty comparable. Family dispute 49 versus 37, that is trending up a little bit. Not all of those are domestic violence, but they're disputes of some respect. Larceny for motor vehicle 37 versus 40, so that's pretty comparable. Accident motor vehicle property damage 291 versus 196, and that's related to the dramatic increase in traffic because last year was kind of
50%.
Yeah, and you'll see that continue to trend up, and it's a pretty normal number. In fact, it's a little bit lower than year end, so we'll see that soon. I'll give you a little perspective next month on previous years to see, you can compare that because the COVID numbers are a lot lower.
Right.
Motor vehicles accident property damage 30 versus 22, so that's trending up, but not of a concern. We're certainly trying to address those accidents where people are injured. Psychiatric problem 44 versus 44, so that's pretty flat, but psychiatric calls are up past couple of years for a lot of different reasons. And then 35 versus 23 stolen vehicles, that's up substantially. And we had another one reported earlier today, so that's 36. So it's probably up about 70% year to year and about 250% in 2 years. So we continue to wait for word from our legislators about what they're able to do based on our last meeting. And
well, the rate in September, October was down considerably from roughly 4 a month down to 1 in September, 2 in October. So
yes.
Is that unique to New Canaan, or is that a trend? Or
it's
is that
slow?
just...
It's slowing a little bit. Yeah, we saw a spurt of stolen cars over the summer and spring. So it's slowing to some degree, but we just had another one in vehicle entry. So they're still around.
Yeah.
Maybe people are being smarter and locking their cars and taking their keys in. They're just not stealing the cars. So that's going to be another factor. So that's certainly good news, and I hope that continues. That's all I have for monthly statistics. What I have is extra aging. Roughly 87,000 is due 31 days or more. It's a lot better than it's been years, months past. So that's certainly good news. And we'll continue to work with our CFO, who sadly is leaving very soon, to try to collect that money as best we can, as quickly as we can. Next report I have is our false alarm aging. There's about $12,000 that are this past due 31 days or more, and a bulk of that, over 120, is $11,000. So I think I'm going to suggest to the CFO that be written off, because I don't know if it's likely that that'll ever be collected. So it kind of makes no sense to keep carrying that, but which his opinion is. That's all I have for reports.
Okay, great. Next is holiday stroll, the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm here. Thank you.
Good.
How are you?
Well,
we are requesting the closure of Elm Street and the pop-up park on Friday, December 3rd. The good news is that the holiday stroll is back after taking a year off. And the stroll, it's kind of in 2 phases. We have a show at that South and Elm intersection. And so we have a stage that the town houses for us, and I have a crew come in and build it. So we will need to close that area at about 2 o'clock. And then the rest of the street can close at about 4:30. We can begin that process. I'll work with the DPW. They'll put a sign up, and we'll put some signage up so people know to clear the street. I've worked with Jason, and we have obviously police coverage for that event. And hopefully we'll have good weather. And then the street will open up by about 9 p.m. that evening.
got it. Great. Tucker, anything to add there?
Nope, all good on our end. She's completed all the special events paperwork. So we're happy to see it back.
Great, glad to see it back too. Awesome. All right, so let's take a vote on that. All those in favor of closure on December 3rd on South and Elm at the old intersection, that was formerly the Upper Park at 2 p.m. and then the rest of Elm at, you need it at 4? Is that all right?
Yeah, at 4 o'clock. We'll start the process.
Okay, that'd be great. All those and motions.
Motion to close the street for the holiday stroll.
Second. All those in favor? Aye, aye, aye. That passes. Very good, Laura.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you back. Next, New Canaan Ballet request. All right, we've been through this a lot. We've got all, Billy, you're here. Billy Mcleod is in the room. We've gone through a number of letters, pro and con, from the community. Billy, why don't you just give a couple minutes, like 2 to 3, because this is 3 months of meetings. All right,
of course.
So we don't need the whole, we know what the.
I understand. Well, my name is Billy Mcleod, and I'm the owner-operator of New Canaan Ballet. My wife Meredith and I live here in New Canaan. Our kids go to school here. We have 5 restaurants who have requested you as a police commission allow us the opportunity to operate a valet stand on 4th Street on Friday and Saturday nights to help increase the flow of traffic, to manage the restaurant parking for businesses there. They would be considered sponsors in other municipalities who are requesting us to serve them. We are not charging them anything to do this. We're taking 100% of the risk. We've done the traffic plan and gathered support, not only from those restaurants, but also from local community influencers such as Rob Malazzi, Steve Carl, and others. Nick Williams is supportive of the idea. We've spoken to First Selectman Moynihan about this. And the fact is that almost 100% of the people we have spoken to believe that this deserves a short-term trial to alleviate some of the stoppages that happen on 4th Street every single night in the dropping off and picking up of people. And it's going to be compounded, especially when it comes to the weather. And so we have a private partner on Cross Street that's going to allow us to utilize their parking, not utilizing any town parking. We have the appropriate insurance that is accepted by municipalities nationwide, including here in the state of Connecticut. 4th Street is written into this policy as a covered area for a stand. And we will man this and pay not only the insurance for the vehicles, we also have workman's compensations insurance for all of our employees. All of our employees are background checked, motor vehicle history tested and trained. And so our request to you with these 5 restaurants asking you for permission to give us the right to do this is to allow us a short-term trial. The basis of this is inside the charter itself, and that is in charter under the Parking Commission C-15-5 that gives the police commission the opportunity to make from time to time rules for the regulation of traffic on streets, highways, and other public places under the jurisdiction of the police commission, not inconsistent with the ordinances of the town or the law, and may fix a penalty for violation thereof. So not only does it give you the right to make this jurisdiction, it gives you the right with some teeth to impose penalties if we're not in operation as we promised. And it says that upon adoption by the police commission, such rules shall not be effective until 10 days after publication. Such rules may be altered, amended, or suspended, or repealed in the same manner as they may be adopted, meaning that, again, there's teeth in this, that you can revoke this permission you've granted us, you can alter it at any point in time for any reason, and all existing traffic regulations shall remain in effect until altered, amended, or suspended, or repealed in accordance with provisions hereof. In formulating any such rules, the police commission shall consider recommendations from the parking commission and from the board of selectmen and from the town council. So if you guys rule today that you might consider this as a possibility, it still has to go to the parking commission, who I've met with informally. It still has to go to the board of selectmen, who I have counseled with privately and individually, and it still has to go to the town council. So any determination that you make here still has to go through a few different hurdles, and the ordinance that the portion of the town council of the charter that allows you the ability to let this move forward for others to hear and consider. You still have the ability to revoke at any time and pull back. So that's the recommendation. I ask for your consideration in this matter, with a huge majority of support on Forest Street from the business owners.
Okay.
Short term.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Questions?
Yes, I actually do have 3 questions. You mentioned 5 restaurants. Can you refresh my memory, please, as to what those 5 restaurants
sure
who
can.
fully support you?
I sure can. So
Or
I've
you
got,
could just tell me.
I've got New Canaan Diner. I've got the owner right here with a letter of support with her phone number. If you have any questions of her,
Okay.
I've got Hoyt Livery and Veggie Barn, who's going to allow me to utilize their parking on Cross Street, all of their parking lots, so not to utilize any town properties. I've got Locali Pizza on the corner, and again, and each one of these is an individually customized letter. I've got Gates Restaurant. This is one of the largest restaurants on the block, and they are asking you, all these letters are addressed to the police commission. So these are not letters to me.
Yep.
They're letters to you. I've got a letter from Cava, which is the 2nd largest restaurant on the block. Both Gates and Cava have major issues with this, with senior populations not being able to dine there because they can't get up and down those hills. And then I've got a letter from Paul Tully at Tequila Mockingbird as well. So I've got Cava, Tequila Mockingbird, and Gates, all 3 restaurants next to each other. I've got New Canaan Diner, where the stand will be in front of their pocket park, where they have and Gates have the ability to utilize
I understand that. I just wanted to know what the 5
and then again, the last thing I would mention is that I've got support from the council president, Steve Carl, who has said that he's wanted to do this for 20 years, that he wanted to do it himself, and that he fully recommends this and has asked you, Commissioner Foley, to give us a trial because the downtown business owners deserve it, and it's in writing. And so all I'm asking you to do today is to push it forward, and it will ultimately come back to you.
Okay. I also have one more, a couple of questions.
And I appreciate the questions.
So you said you have full support from Carl, Kevin, Malazi, and Nick.
I have a verbal support from Nick. Yes. I've got full support from Rob.
Okay.
And I've got full support from Steve. Yes, ma'am. In fact, I had a conversation today. With the former president of the town council, who is telling me he's got 60 additional parking spots in downtown that he would allow me to use if necessary. And I'm going to be talking with him. I talked to him prior to the meeting. Sure. I'll be talking to him after.
And one last question. I know, we've been going at this back and forth for a month, and each time that you were here with your presentation for us, you have mentioned that you have support from influencers. I noticed that word. Can you please clarify what you mean? Because I don't know what influencers, who are these people? Who are they?
Right. So influencers would be former members of the town council, former elected members, like we've just mentioned, like Rob Malazzi, like in the past it was Steve Carl. Now he's actually sitting, or John, who just left the town council. I mean, again, I got a phone call from Arnold Karp this week that says that he believes in the idea and believes that it would make a lot of sense. There's a little bit of a lightning rod there because he's doing some things in town. But the fact is that he knows a lot about developing in this town. And he made a personal call to me this week saying he supports the idea. So when I get phone calls like that, it's worth it to me. There's also, there's also public support on the
Billy,
articles that were written.
we've also seen a number of letters on the other side.
And then that was something I wanted to ask you, is that in full transparency, I would like you to maybe put those records, those letters that you say, and that I spoke to you earlier this last week, that you said that you've received letters against. I have not seen any letters against, and none of these have been put on record. There's only one person that I have on record against, and that would be Alice Mahoney over on 4th Street, because she lives on the block. And she also would be considered an influencer in town, because what her family has brought to the town, the good works that her and her family have done with the Be Kind Foundation. I fully support their opinion. And I've reached out to her personally to have a conversation. Also, Laura over at the dance studio has reached out to me, because the stand will be in front of her business. We've had communications as well.
The dance studio is against this, by the way.
I'm sorry?
The dance studio is against this.
Again, she reached out to me. We've had communications about this.
Paul, there's two different dance studios. You've got, and I think you have one of the members, New Canaan Dance Academy. They've expressed opposition. Right. He's referring to Laura Haskins, which is a different.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
And where the stand would be directly in front of her. And one of the things that's very interesting about the concept is that some of the folks at the restaurants, and even Alice Mahoney over at the residence, where there's the 7 units, they've expressed angst at some of the traffic that these dance studios have brought to that street, right? Because you have the cars that are trying to circle. We all know that happens. But then you have drop-offs for those kids. A lot of times the parents are dropping off the kids, and then they're circling back, parking, and then coming to a performance. One thing that I mentioned to Laura over at the studio was that we would actually have the ability to park those cars. So yes, we have support from 5 restaurants on the block, 5 of the 7, and we would park the cars. Mind you, all handicapped placards that would pull up to our stand would be able to park for free. Now, currently there's only 2 spots on that entire block. One in front of where we would have to stand, which would still be open. The other all the way at the end of the street. It's only 2 spots. We would park every handicapped placard car at no charge, allowing more accessibility. But the cool thing about that dance studio thing is we would be able to park those parents' cars, also reducing bottlenecks on that street, which is kind of cool.
Got it. Do you have any questions? Or
No
questions. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Personally, I'm back to my original. Back to the original discussion of I'm uncomfortable giving up public property, public streets to a private enterprise. So I'm uncomfortable with doing that. The charter says that, but I think that's more referring to parking and loading zones and things like that.
What about dumpsters?
But we don't have any dumpsters on the streets.
No, there's dumpsters on the street whenever there's a renovation going, and they are parked in parking spots, and they are there for a number of days. Okay. And they are there for a business that's operating on. I'm just saying that is being done currently. Right. It's not so dissimilar, except a dumpster is not really in the public interest, whereas the valet business is completely in the public interest.
We can argue that point back and forth, where the dumpster is there to create a new store or a new restaurant, and that is in the public interest, to help bring the town up into, either a higher level of a store or a restaurant or something.
Except it's taking parking, whereas actually I'm multiplying parking.
Right. But I'm still not there. I'm not there. So we've got to call a vote on this one way or the other. So all those, I guess, would be.
Let me just ask a question that Ms. Mcleod raised. We did receive a number of letters from people who are opposed to this on the street. And you've asked that we make those public. Does anyone here know? Are those public?
I mean, where are they?
They're public information.
Yeah, if they come into the event, they can be FOI.
So, well, but FOIing them is one thing. But if you're making a determination against this request, they should be made public here.
Well, they're not. We're going to make a vote tonight, Billy. I'm sorry.
Well, the vote tonight is not necessarily to allow me to do this, because the fact is, no, my point is that based on the charter, you would merely be giving this an opportunity to go before the town, the Board of Selectmen and the town council. And so then it would have to come back to you. My point is that I don't understand if there's a benefit to the community and that you guys are here to serve the community, why you wouldn't allow it to go past you to the Board of Selectmen and the town council to receive their input. Because I'm not going to be parking cars this weekend.
Right.
I mean, but the fact is that if there is merit, it'll still come back to you. I don't understand why you would kill it, but Ford had an opportunity to reach their desk when there is more support for this than there is non-support. The majority of the support.
Well, you've given us 5 people that you said that support you, 5 restaurants, but
And-
we've gotten quite a number of letters from people who are saying who are against it.
Who? How many?
Well, even Locale didn't sound that positive.
Well, I've got a letter right here from Locale that I can put in front of all of you.
Yeah, but then we also have a
But-
letter too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's pretty clear. It says,
He was concerned that his original letter may have been misconstrued.
right.
And he wrote at some length to indicate that while
He's basically indifferent to the concept. This is his finding. So.
Okay. Again,
there's
so
opposition from Jim Tissimo, there's opposition from the New Canaan Dance Academy, there's opposition from the
the
people
neighbors.
who live in the heritage apartments over there. There's opposition from, and I'm forgetting her name, the other residents. So there's substantial opposition as well as the 5 restaurants who were in favor.
and that's why I say, so we have 6 letters in favor, which is saying we have 4 letters against, 2 of those letters being from the exact same building.
We don't vote that way.
My point is that 2 of the letters are from a building that opposed the building.
Saying are in favor or opposed.
2 letters, yeah.
Oh.
Locale and Cava are opposed.
Locale and Calva are opposed.
I-
So then, okay, so we'll
You're
take
saying
those off the
Cava is
list.
opposed. I have met with them on multiple times and they are in favor.
No.
No.
Well, I would say they
Right.
said they joined in the idea because he thought it would benefit customers and elders. I was led to believe that most of the street was also joining.
Which is true.
I know the street has parking issues. I was not trying to offend neighbors, just really thought I was helping. So, I mean, I don't know if you say
It
this is
sounds
opposed,
like the
but
neighbors, sounds like the neighbors, the activist neighbors at this building who have also opposed restaurants to go down below them. So there is a record of this residential building where they built this building. They knew what they were buying into on what people refer to as Restaurant Row. So there's a record of this. These people are being activists and influencing you, and it's coming from a point of selfishness. My point to you is that, I mean, because it seems like that letter from Cava is reacting to the fact that she did not want to upset neighbors.
All right.
Okay, so my point is that you have people.
Billy, enough. All right.
Yeah, man, this seems really
We've
weird.
been round and
You've
round
made
on
your
this
case.
thing.
Seems
You
really
made your
weird.
case. You made a case for it.
Seems really weird.
Made a case for it. We're going to take a vote whether to approve or disapprove of it. All right. And again, I've expressed how I felt all along here, and I've heard from you. I've read these letters, and I've read other letters. And
I appreciate your
and we didn't reject it out of hand. We didn't reject it out of hand the next month, and now we're here for the 3rd month.
Of course. And again, I appreciate your service, your volunteers. Thank you very much.
Right. So how do you want to make this motion? Motion to approve or to disapprove? You can make it either way. Motion. How about this? Motion to approve the use of Forest Street for New Canaan Valley's venture. Right? Is that adequate? You're the lawyer here.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not a lawyer.
I guess I'll second the motion and then we can vote on it.
Correct.
All right, so I second.
The motion is to approve.
And can I have a point of inquiry?
Sure.
Just based on the charter, even if you were to approve today, the charter indicates it still has to go through.
We understand.
Yeah,
Okay, again, I just want, am I correct in that reading of the charter?
Billy, I was on town council for 10 years. I know the charter pretty well.
Okay, again, I was
You made
just
it very
trying to,
clear. Okay.
I apologize.
Not at all. Done.
Thank you very much.
All right. So all those in second, right? All those in favor of approving this, raise your hand. Okay. All those opposed. Okay. So the nays have it.
Yeah.
For the record, it's 0-3 to approve. All right.
And then one last question now that you've already made your vote.
Yes.
If a local restaurant was wanting to have valet for a private party, for a one night only event, because it was going to be a large event, and it would be better off for the town to actually have valet than to have people circling.
Yeah. I don't know
Is
how that
this vote is specifically for Forest Street for a permanent basis? And I guess is the door open to request a permission from you to allow for a valet parking event?
Well, we just discussed this, so that's a whole other scenario you're
you
bringing
can
up.
bring that
Yeah.
to us. Another one-off deal like Roger Sherman something, or?
Well, no, not Roger Sherman.
seems
So,
to
but
work
I mean,
pretty
let's just say that, let's say any restaurant in town, let's say, for a lack of better anything, let's just say
I mean, it's just hard, whether it's.
Soleil, let's say Soleil wanted to have an
this
event.
vote, let's just say this vote doesn't foreclose that. If that comes up, why don't you come back to us with it? We'll
Okay, again, and
consider putting it on the agenda.
I appreciate the time and effort that you put into it.
It's just that it's very hard to shut down, close off an area, especially with the bump outs on Elm Street. That's gonna be, but we'll take another look at it.
And again,
We'll take another look at it.
thank you for your consideration and the time you invested.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. C, course approval for Sergeant Miranda.
Sure, Lieutenant Ferenga is seeking approval for a course towards a graduate degree. Course is personal leadership. Upon successful completion, he'll be reimbursed for our labor agreement. I recommend approval.
Okay, motion to approve.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's approved. Officer Renzi.
Mr. Rienzi has completed his probation and he's performing well. I recommend that you vote to make him a permanent employee.
Great. All in favor? Yes?
Yes,
Yes, yes.
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 That's unanimous. Police training facility presentation.
Or can you enable screen sharing, Joe? You have a hard copy there. This is identical to what I presented to
Monday night.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, well, Monday night was the building.
Oh, yeah, okay.
This was the building committee last Friday. Was it Friday
Got
or
it.
Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to share with you. So critically important. And
Right. Building
there's
committee.
some
For those of you who aren't there, the building committee saw this presentation. Got it.
Okay.
So that the building committee, and the building committee's task is to look at this site to either, and the task will be when the decision's made to the renovate as new or to build a new structure here to take on that project and move it forward to completion. Okay.
The town council's making some sort of vote tonight, right?
I think there's a straw vote tonight.
It's not on the agenda,
I think they were going to kind of nod in one way or the other to get a feel for. I think because we really requested on Monday night, let's move this forward, site specific, and then towards either renovate or to build a new structure. And I don't think that has to be done that tonight, but I think Steve Carl wants to kind of know where the town council is coming out. Thank you.
Sure. So amongst some members of the building committee, there's some confusion about the various uses in the specific rooms and the training facility. So felt it was prudent to prepare this to kind of enlighten everyone. And it's important for you folks to see it too, because it's so critical. So this is related to our fitness room, tactics, use of force and firearms, and we'll walk through the slides in a minute. And given changes to Connecticut law related to police accountability, I mean, it's even more critical for us to ensure our officers are exceptionally well trained in legally permissible use of force, and robust training options really are best practice. So your agenda for tonight and for this presentation is we're going to talk about the physical fitness room, defensive tactics room, live fire training facility history, cost benefit. Benefits are far exceed the cost, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Our world's changed in the last decade or so. School shootings, wrongful death, active threat cases, substantial changes in Connecticut law. And then we're going to talk about training facilities, types and uses. And certainly all of our obligation is to provide optimum facilities to ensure our officers are well trained and safe as they protect and serve our town, which they do so exceptionally well. It's a physical fitness room, pretty self-explanatory. This is a room on the 3rd floor now. Proposal for the building, either as new or renovate as new, is to have a proper physical fitness room with equipment, so our officers can come between shifts and train and get themselves fit. And we know that contributes to officer wellness, safety, and fitness. So that's a critical thing. It has aerobic machines and weights. And right now it's kind of an ad hoc. We have a couple of rooms, a hallway that are pieced together with equipment to give our officers credit for making that happen, given the limitations within our building. But the proposal is for when that renovation or new building moves forward to have a proper fitness facility. So that's fitness facility. So there's some confusion about what that exactly was. Next is our defensive tactics room. That's on our 3rd floor.
Chief,
Yes.
you know, I think we, as the building committee went around to different departments, we saw a number of these kinds of rooms.
Yes.
Could we get pictures of those? Would that help?
Yeah, sure. Maybe. I think the
I get
cleared
it,
up.
of course. But,
Yeah,
but
certainly.
when you see these
A proper fitness facility.
fitness facility,
Sure.
it makes a bigger
It does.
impression. And you go, geez, I'd work out there. I mean, we'd all work out there. I think that would help.
Sure. That's easy to do.
Okay.
Good point. So this is a room on our 3rd floor. Officers got the mats donated from the high school and installed them on their own time. And this is where we do hands-on arrest control techniques and defensive tactics, de-escalation. And obviously it's so essential because, hands-on, handcuffing, and taking control of people that are fighting is really essential. So you don't have to resort to other tools that we have, and you can use more force than you need to. So it's certainly well connected with risk mitigation and liability protection. So that's that defensive tactics room. And there is a dedicated room in both a new building and or renovate as new building. So that's a dedicated room for that. Talk a little bit about our former indoor training facility / range. It was decommissioned probably 15, 16 years ago due to lead contamination and inappropriate ventilation systems, and it was remediated. And this current building was built in 1981, and it had a range in it downstairs, and it was closed. And it's also too short now because the renovation for the 3rd floor, which happened in 2007-8, for the purpose of allowing town hall to move in while the town hall was renovated, they had to install an elevator, and the installation of the elevator is right behind the range area, and that caused it to be too short for qualification. And given the investment, it doesn't make sense to put a range back in that space. And now the best practice, really, from what we've learned from visiting other departments, is to have an independent training facility range that doesn't inhibit activity in the building. There's a facility near us where they're not able to use it a lot of the hours of the day because it disturbs neighboring offices within the building. So that's now a best practice. And that area also has water infiltration and mold. And so that needs to be remediated and corrected if we do renovate as new. So we're waiting for that patient. Talk a little bit about violence. We know that violence can happen anywhere. We never want it to happen, but we have to be prepared and train our officers well for that. Columbine, obviously, everyone knows about that. And since that happened, tactics have changed, and now we teach our officers, the first officer on scene of a school violence or workplace violence, they go right in and they go towards the threat and stop the threat from hurting other people. And that's what they do. And that's how we need to train them. And that's why it's so critically important. And obviously, Sandy Hook, which is about 30 miles away, horrible tragedy. No one thought that would happen. And that was in 2014, I think. So certainly we need to prepare our officers for the unthinkable. And that's why it's so essential. And it's part of our prevention strategies, our school resource officers, and they have monitored entrances, et cetera. But the bigger part of that is our police training, which is so essential. This training facility will allow us to really leverage that and increase the number of hours of training for our officers so they can get towards, which we'll talk about in a minute, is a 10,000 hour rule, which is if you approach 10,000 hours, you're an expert. So we want to get as close to that as we can to make sure that our officers are experts when they have to use force. That's a high school. You can think a little bit about that. If you were put yourself in the shoes of an officer responding to a school shooter, and how critical that is and how important it is to make the best decision within a millisecond. Most of us have hours or days or weeks to make decisions. Officers don't when they go to a critical incident like that. So obviously having a proper training facility is essential to, we can run people through scenarios and talk through things, and probability of making the right decision when you've trained for it is much higher than if you're not training properly for it. That's New York Times. There's been a couple of articles about police killings, nationwide 40 wrongful death actions, $125 million paid. And given in Connecticut, I've seen cases of tens of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars in settlements. So that's why this training center is a good investment. And you just can't compare dollars and cents to the training value and to the risk mitigation that it poses for our officers in our town and us. So I think lots of times this is the cost of not training officers well. And we need to train our officers well. That's why it's so important. And there's a little return on investment. Obviously, the benefits far outweigh the costs. And walk through the columns there. Training costs outside New Canaan, roughly $100,000 with our target of 18 hours of training a year. The state only requires 3, but that's woefully inadequate. And so our target is 18. So that's what it would cost if we continue to do what we're doing, which isn't a best practice or adequate in a lot of ways. And then right column is training costs in New Canaan. We can pretty much cut our costs substantially if we had our training facility on site. And to the right, that green section, potential for no cost is pretty much unlimited after shifts, before shift, during the shift. As long as we have an instructor there or the officer chooses to shoot on their own, it's dramatically increased training hours towards that 10,000 hours.
What does it mean in that right-hand column? Number of officers being trained, 47, okay? And then this one says 3. What does that refer to?
Yeah, that's the 3 hours. So
That's hours. Okay.
yes, so that's a state requirement.
But it says number of officers.
So green, you mean?
Well, mine's black and white, but
Okay.
in that first paragraph,
Yes,
it says number of officers being trained, 47, which would be our count,
yes.
right? Then this column says 3.
Yeah, I think that's a carryover. That's a mistake.
I think that might be the number of officers that are being.
That's instructors, instructor
Yeah,
cost.
in the middle, it says
Right.
hours.
Right,
Where the cost would be eliminated because their officers are being trained while they're here
that's right.
working.
Right.
Or just, so it reduces the number of overtime hours.
Yes. Can't completely eliminate it, but we can reduce it substantially and increase the number of hours. So Connecticut's police accountability law, we're obligated to train our officers to comply with these new laws. Inadequate training costs taxpayers millions. And these are all new things that we need to train our officers to the standard of being objectively reasonable when they do use force. Make sure they're de-escalating, eliminates justification for deadly force in certain situations. Did the officer's conduct provocation lead to increased risk that force was necessary? Use of deadly force should not create a substantial risk to third parties. Do officers now have a duty to intervene? There's now a state office of inspector general that will investigate serious use of force cases and deaths. And there's now a new state civil rights cause of action, the product of which remains unseen. And we don't know how that's going to increase litigation in Connecticut, how it's going to affect us, but certainly we need to mitigate those risks there by training our officers really well.
Yeah, we don't want to be the first case.
No. And the question is, what's great constitutional and community policing? Using only the minimum force, objectively reasonable required. Right now, we have very strong policies. As you know, we're one of only 3 nationally accredited agencies in Fairfield County. And we have very strong oversight and related to those policies. And our training is not as robust as it should be. So that's not where it needs to be. And the training facility will get us there. And overall goal is to mitigate liability and in those circumstances that are low frequency and high risk when we use force, which is rare, and especially deadly force or more substantial force, we need to make sure that our training officers are perfect and as best practices can be. Training facilities now, types and uses. Current conditions, we use an outdoor shooting range in Danbury, state-owned park, public shooting range operated by a private association. It hosts dozens of private and law enforcement members. Up 50 yards, there's annual fees that we have to pay. And there's a lot of competition for getting time there. So often it's very difficult for us to get slots there. And so that's a certainly big challenge. Shortcomings, at any time the range could close. We don't know, the operator could be financially unstable and close. The state could terminate the agreement. Lead accumulation or leaching could become an issue, which could cause the range to close. It's also a long distance to travel, requires 4 hours of overtime, and it's off-duty training entirely. So certainly having an on-site facility would allow us to train a substantial number of hours on duty, and that would be significant. And as I mentioned, dozens of the police departments compete for limited availability, and sometimes we have to cancel. In fact, we did about a week ago due to the weather. So we can't use it when the weather's really detrimental because it's not a good training value. And nighttime use is very constrained, if not, not at all. So about 14 years we've been doing what we're doing currently, and it's time for best practice and to move forward and make sure that we're have an adequate training facility on site. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the facility types which we're requesting. And we'll talk a little bit about the traditional static range, which I think everybody visualizes and why that's inadequate. And then we're going to talk about a dynamic multi-use range, and then the virtual range, which is 300-degree immersive. And the dynamic is designed for live fire, 25 yards or so long, multiple shooting lanes. Ideally, you can bring a car inside, and you can also use simulated ammunition there for scenario-based training. And the immersive is a kind of a laser-based training where you can put officers through immersive scenarios, kind of a computer game to some degree, but you'll see a visualization of that in a few slides. And it's a very dynamic way, but it doesn't take the place of live fire or live training. It's a complementary training that really will make our officers really well trained. So that's traditional static range. Shooting at the firing line, that's it. It may allow you to qualify, but it's inadequate for training, especially given all the challenges we have today, and no longer good or best practice. So that's a best practice firing range with no lanes per se. It's wide open. Versatile use for dynamic hands-on training. We can expand low light tactics. We can do all kinds of training scenarios in a range like this that we're proposing, and it'll be very dynamic, and we'll best simulate a real life scenario as we can to make sure our officers are making the best decisions they can in a very dynamic situation. That's a possibility of having a vehicle and training in and around a vehicle, which is essential. And that would also be an ask related to the training facility. So a little more about the multi-use live fire range. You know, the 10,000 hour rule I talked about, making sure our officers are experts when they have to use force. It's going to check the box for mandated firearms qualification, enhanced use for multi-officer movement, scenario training, use of force de-escalation, low light scenarios, decision-making under stress, vehicle-based scenarios, room clearing and searching, team decision-making, and it's going to be a multi-use space to fit today's dynamic training needs. And shoot, don't shoot training diminishes or eliminates an agency's liability. So that's why it's so essential. And, you know, we like to focus on when not to shoot as well as when you have to shoot. So those are two critical aspects of that. So optimum live fire facility, 5 to 8 lanes in New Canaan, access during and after shifts, singular group training, moving, approaching, big enough for automobile, handgun, rifle, 10+ hours a day, low light scenarios. Training's not controlled by the weather. And sadly, Darien is beating us right now because they have their own facility and they require their officers to do individual training 1 hour a month in addition to the department-wide training. So we just aren't able to do that unless we have a facility on site like we are asking for. So that's why it's also critical. Location comparison outside of New Canaan, only after hours versus in New Canaan during normal shifts. Outside 4 hour minimum overtime, training while on duty in New Canaan. estimated travel 40 minutes versus no travel time, not able to train by themselves for outside New Canaan, able to train by yourself if you're inside New Canaan, limited access and availability, and unlimited access to New Canaan. So that's why it's so essential to have it on site. Now we'll talk a little bit about the virtual training facility. So that's the 300-degree immersive room. It'd be a room inside our building and or inside the training facility, depending on how the architect finally designs either facility. And it's really a dynamic use of force training facility that you can see surrounds the officer with scenarios and forces them to make critical decisions in a very safe, collaborative environment. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So you can use virtual use of force tools. So your firearm, your capstun or pepper spray, your taser, and there's hundreds of scenarios regarding active threat, autism awareness, behavioral health, de-escalation, and it's immersive judgment-based training based on scientific research. And at the end, you can do structured debriefing to enhance learning, what went well, what you did well, what you didn't go so well, what you could have done different. And that's why it's so essential, connected with our live fire training facility, to have this virtual training facility. So some best practices: deliberate indifference training costs millions, and that's a legal term for inadequate training, deliberately indifferent training. Recent and upcoming changes in Connecticut law requires permissible use of force to be well trained. And we know that immersive training equals better outcomes, and lifelike scenarios leads to better outcomes. And case law requires that firearms training must reflect the environment officers face. That is, moving targets, moving officers, low light conditions, and residential areas. And to do anything less really is deficient. So that's why this is also so critical. And robust training options equals better outcomes. And we also know that the virtual use of scenario room further enhances skills, and along with the live fire facility, and physically fit and well-trained officers related to the fitness room equal better outcomes. And it's our obligation to ensure our officers have best practice training options that are immersive and are legally sound. And a little bit of a summary: officer safety and resident safety, that's our focuses. We need to make sure our officers are safe and they're keeping our residents safe. Even when sometimes we have to arrest our own residents, we need to make sure that we're doing it properly and legally in line with best practices, and only using the minimum amount of force necessary to control the situation. And my opinion is the benefits of training, safety and liability mitigation far exceed the cost of any range. So I know a lot of people want to get into dollars and cents, but really it's such an investment. It's so priceless to have this, and it's really a required best practice given today's environment we're in. And obviously our world's changed. Police accountability has changed everything we do. And that's why it's so essential to have these facilities. And we know that best practices training mitigates liability. That's our ultimate goal. Thank you. You're welcome.
So that was to the building committee the other day. And I think that was a big help in moving them forward and understanding what we actually need. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Building renovation update.
Yeah, so
Monday
you folks were there the other night when they talked through either the renovate as new or build new
Chief,
somewhere.
we have your personal email.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm not.
Yeah.
We talked through our renovate as new and or build as new facility.
Yep.
And we'll see what the options end up happening as we move forward.
We need to stop sharing the screen.
All right, so we'll stop sharing and we'll go
Yeah,
back
we have
to
to stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, now we're
Stop
back.
sharing.
Thank
There we
you.
go. Thanks.
So, we'll see you. I'm very grateful for the first selectman's drive to move forward. It's so critical that we either renovate our new building as new, or we build a new building somewhere. So, I'm very grateful for that, but we just need to come to the conclusion about what the right answer is. And I think we're getting closer than we ever before in history. So that's certainly good news. And I expect within the coming months, there'll be a decision.
Yeah, I think I understood coming out of that Monday night meeting, they kind of want to get through December and then vote on it in January.
I just asked Tucker, I believe it's going to be discussed at the town council meeting tonight.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
I don't think they're gonna vote on it though tonight.
But they were gonna vote on
Okay,
something.
and something maybe moving it forward or.
They may not vote,
Yeah,
but I think it's
okay,
gonna
good.
be,
That's great. That's great to know. Good.
we may want to pop over there.
Yeah.
We know when, we don't know when, right?
She said they're adding it to their agenda.
Oh, okay.
So it'd probably be at the end. Okay, good. Got it. Okay. Traffic reports.
So I sent you the traffic study from Old Stamford Road from Marcus and Hanover, Mike Galante's group. They were tasked with providing some conceptual improvements to improve the traffic flow and safety along that section of Old Stamford Road in a sharp curve. They returned us their report with a number of short-term and long-term recommended improvements. Increase signage, improve the signage, install radar speed signs, which I asked the chief to include in next year's budget, some solar powered ones that we could leave out for a longer period of time, indefinitely if we wanted to.
Right.
Rumble strips, which would be the center line rumble strips, which would be down the yellow center line.
Okay.
They would not go across, so you wouldn't hear them unless it was
Yeah,
crossing.
we don't want to go down that one again.
No. Painting hash marks or the shoulder to kind of visually constrict the roadway, which would enhance drivers wanting to slow down, install better lighting. There currently is no street lights on that curve, surprisingly. Yeah, I went there this afternoon. There's one at Orchard.
Yeah, there's at the intersection, but
At
not
the intersection of
but not-
Orchard
but
and
not-
one at Park Place, but not on the curve itself. So it is a very dark curve. So I think some improved lighting, and they've gotten much better with street lights where they can direct them directly down onto the road and not have to bleed over to neighboring yards. I did meet with some of the residents in the Old Stamford Road area on Monday, and they were all accepting of that.
Okay.
So the long-term improvements, he talks about, he does talk about the sidewalk, concept of a sidewalk. You know, there's some inherent problems with that. Obviously, one, we're identifying a traffic problem and an accident problem. Do we really want to put a sidewalk and encourage pedestrians to walk on an area that we're saying is a problem?
Right.
And the only way really to do that is to put up some significant guardrails, which would then take away from the appeal of the road and make it look more like a highway. And then you have to have sections cleared for the driveways there, so that adds another layer of safety concern, because now people are going to go into the abutment of a guardrail. So I think the sidewalk concept was just included just as a thought, but it would, and how it would improve would be you could take away that wide shoulder with sidewalk area, but I don't think we want to pursue that right now.
And I think if they want to pursue a sidewalk at some point, it should be on the east side of the street.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, whichever
where all the
side
people live.
yeah.
I mean, if people live here.
Yeah.
They have here. There's very few houses on the west side of the street. So you'd have people crossing the road to go down the road to cross back the road.
But I'm not really interested in including the sidewalk as a traffic calming measure. That's
fine.
I think a whole other basket that we don't want to get into.
But it definitely needs one, because I mean, I've seen people like walk to the bird sanctuary and they're walking on the grass and trying to, there's no shoulder.
Yeah,
like
and maybe we could do it, like you said, on the east side and then do a crosswalk at the bird sanctuary.
Yeah.
Maybe still
tighten
drive some traffic down.
Yeah. And then that way, at least it's on the long straightaway where they would be crossing. Not
Right. Right. So again, being a state road, we need to submit this to the state DOT, and I would like to just have a letter from the traffic authority to send this to the state DOT, and then have a representative from the state DOT sit down with Tiger and I to discuss the recommendations and see what we can actually move forward on, see what they're accepting. Okay, so the recommendations would be, is it just 1 through 4? Well, I think we would discuss the entire report, but definitely 1 through 4. And one other thing that we also added was a high friction surface treatment at the end there, which would increase the friction of the road surface. We're on the Merritt Parkway down in Greenwich, right? To improve the safety there. So that, along with the other recommended changes or recommendations on page 3, we would sit down with the state DOT and see what they would be in agreement to and who would actually fund it, when we could actually do it. But I think the next step is to just send this report to the state DOT and ask them to
have a sit down with you.
Legal Traffic Authority is in support of these recommendations and it has to have a discussion.
So we'd be voting on authorizing you to go ahead and do that. And
to engage with the state DOT.
To engage with
based on this
them
study.
And for us to basically endorse the recommendations and then you work out with them what can be done.
Right.
But then come back to us. Why don't you come back to us with any changes?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah. We would
we're not
with the
saying,
results of
this is not a blank check.
No, this is to sit down and once we come to some agreement, I will come back to you and say, this is what we agreed and this is what the states agreed to, and then get your blessing on that.
Okay, I'm okay with that. Okay.
That could take months, right? It's going to take a while.
Yeah. It's a state.
Yeah, it's a state.
This could be years.
Fortunate thing is these aren't major changes, so it could go quickly.
But if we do get a barrier, I would suggest if we could go that route, and it doesn't have to go the whole length of the curve, but on the Merritt Parkway is wood and it blends in. And I don't know if that's even. I don't want a steel barrier there.
No. We would not consider that, and I'd be very cautious about making it. And the neighbors were very concerned about making it look more like a highway, and that would in fact probably have a counter effect of encouraging people to drive faster because they felt it would be safer to rip around. So we want to be very careful and cognizant of that.
Okay,
that's great.
Okay.
Sometimes they identify how much the town is responsible for, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have to share
that. But these aren't significantly
I think the radar signs, great. The rumble strips, yes. Hand painting, slashing a bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would be the street lights.
And they could. It's not going to be Yankee Stadium. It's going to be straight down.
Focused LED lights, right.
And then that if they could resurface it or add that surface that they use on the Merritt Parkway, I think that'd be really helpful as well. Okay.
Something that's aesthetically pleasing for the neighbors.
Yes.
Yes.
So nothing will happen until they come back to us.
Maybe like those huge flower pots.
Okay, so let's vote on that. All those in favor of advancing that concept? Okay. Aye. All right. All those in favor. Okay, that's that. I wanted to discuss Elm Street and the barriers at some point here. Why don't we just do that at the end? All right, so approval of the extra hours.
Sure, this is part of a tentative agreement with the union related to the labor agreement. But this is an item that the Board of Selectmen have authority for, but periodically you've reviewed it and voted on it, and recommendation to the Board of Selectmen and or the other boards to ratify the entire agreement. But this is specifically just for the extra duty hourly rate. They haven't had a raise since 2017. So the recommendation is an $85 an hour raise for non-town extra duty. No change to the town extra duty, which is when the town hires officers for various projects, and that would remain at $70 per hour and subject to Board of Selectmen approval.
Okay, any discussion on that? You're okay with that?
Yep.
You're okay with that? All right, I think that's all those in favor. Aye. That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. I don't think there's any confusion there. So non-town is 85, will go into effect, and then town, like Board of Ed type of things.
Yeah, or sometimes Tiger hires officers for projects and things like that.
So, great. Okay. Very good. Letters of appreciation.
Sure. First letter is for Officer Adams. He did a security review for a resident who was concerned, and she just says her appreciation. He was pleasant, helpful, and took his time. He walked the house and he gave me some suggestions. Thank you for the service. More people should take advantage. So that's nice that she took the time to write a letter to thank Officer Adams for his work. Next letter is from our Community Emergency Response Team, Stuart Salvini, related to Dan Polino doing an outstanding presentation regarding traffic control for CERT members. And Stuart states, overall, he was a tribute to the New Canaan Police Department. We were grateful for his and the department's willingness to contribute to CERT's ongoing training. And certainly we're very grateful for CERT's help in a variety of scenarios throughout the whole year. So we're glad to help them whenever we can. And this is actually an email from Captain Walsh related to Officers Cece and Coughlin assisting with a coat drive. And also Lieutenant Ferraro and Christine Brown assisted with that regarding social media. And it's certainly a nice event to gather coats and get people that need them. So he closes by saying, they're showing New Canaan how the efforts of policing are not one-dimensional in nature, but include community outreach and goodwill towards helping the citizens in a multifaceted manner, and great work. So certainly that's another nice note. Okay, so see the Department Insight Bulletin for your reading pleasure regarding the legal developments impacting what we do.
Oh yeah, okay, just to make sure that we sent a letter. This is the letter we sent to the court. Yes, yes. So that you can see that we. This was a follow-up from the.
They were very appreciative of
that. They were trying to get the their driveway widened a bit last meeting. We sent this letter. Okay. Just for 2 minutes or so, John, are you aware of what's going on Elm Street with the removing the barriers or not removing the barriers? The restaurants were told that they still have to have this by the Department of Justice, I guess, to have for the ADA requirements to have a 4-foot barrier down the middle of the road or middle of the sidewalk, that you can't go this way and that way anymore. That's
this may be part of the DOJ complaint.
That's part of the DOJ complaint. Tucker and Tiger and others are working on that now. I think.
How did that come about?
Somebody in town called the DOJ on it. Yes, yes. And now the DOJ, then instead of busting, drug lords, narcotics, white collar crime, have now sent spot checks into New Canaan to see that our sidewalks are for handicapped people, which we're all for making sure that ADA requirements are put in place and enforced. But there are certain issues in a small town that don't that we've got to work around. So they're working around that now. They'll come to you.
Okay. Yeah.
I think they're going to talk to each restaurant. So I don't think we need a motion to keep the barriers.
I think we voted last time.
Yeah.
Our couch observes that the barriers would remain in place until the bump outs were built. Now, at that time, Tiger believed that the bump outs would be built by year end, which I think is now pushed out.
Push that. He had,
but that was our
that was our
vote. That they would stay there until the bump outs were built.
Correct.
Yeah, he had a very difficult time finding any contractors that were able to do the work this year. So it has to wait until next spring.
Okay, so I would be in favor of leaving. I really don't want to let the barriers, but I would be in favor of leaving them for the restaurants to get through the winter, just like we did last year, because there's a spike in COVID. A lot of people, I think, are going to be uncomfortable eating inside, possibly. And if they want to eat outside, we want to be able to give them that opportunity.
Now that may mean that they just move the tables out.
Yeah, that's what I think they're doing, is moving the tables out into the street, basically. So you'd have the building, the 4 feet, and then the tables against the barriers. And I don't know if we need a motion for that, but I would certainly want those in town to know that we're in favor of that, keeping the.
Last year, when there was a pending snowstorm,
and Tiger moved them.
They would clear the barriers out.
And they had to move the tables off the sidewalk anyway. That doesn't change that at all, because they have to clear not only the street but the sidewalk. So everything needs to get cleared out.
And I understand that businesses want parking spaces back, and we're trying to work with that as well. And we certainly did that on Forest Street, and that the barriers were moved on Forest Street to allow for a lot more parking there.
And the woman from McCain the Elm Street bookstore.
Yeah, Susan Ryan.
So that,
right.
It's actually been great. It's been, you know, even though they gave up parking spaces.
Yeah.
And she has no vested interest.
No, but people are going to Rosie's and then they go in the bookstore, you know, so as long, and I want to, you know, certainly we're in favor of more business in Buchanan as for both the businesses and the restaurants. So if there's any misunderstanding or miscommunication that the commission wants the barriers removed for some reason, I would like to put that at rest. And then we'd like to.
So maybe what we could do is just renew the resolution that we'll keep the barriers until the bump outs are built.
Yeah.
I can get some information
can always
from Tiger and Tucker and then report back to you next meeting in December.
And if you need a vote before that, we can call a special vote. Okay. Because there was a flurry of phone calls this week about, oh, they're taking the barriers down and we'll never serve food again here and it's going to be horrible. And it's like, all right, let's all calm down. Let's take a step back and find out what's really going on. So if you could look into that, and then if you need a vote from us, let me know.
Well, this is just Elm Street, right?
It's just Elm Street, right? Because Spiga, they took those barriers out. They didn't put them in, so that was that. Good. All right, let us know on that. State Department, yeah. The Smith Ridge letter, I just did that. Let's go into executive session at 7:13. Vote to go into executive session. Motion.
There you go.
Try one more time?
Yes.
All right, being 7:39, we're coming out of executive session. No other business, old business, or new business. Motion to adjourn. Yes.
Yes.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:41, actually. Thank you very much. All right, good night.